Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Marshall. I'm the Vice President here at Colorado Mesa University, joined with my colleague, Dr. Amy Bronson. To start, we're going to take advantage of the Governor's executive order on masks as he allows us to remove these as we are doing that for the sake of broadcast today. Today, we're really excited to chat with you, parents, students, about questions that you have specific to testing. We know this has been on all of our minds. We've been working really hard this summer to try and line up a testing regime that will work for our campus and bring us all back together safely. Before we begin addressing your questions, I wanted to remind you all of the web resources available for review and address many of the questions we've received over the last week. CMU launched a new website this month with the goal of making navigation easier for parents and students. Here at the CMU homepage, you can access COVID-19 information resources by clicking the tab at the top right of your screen. That's the COVID-19 tab. After clicking on COVID-19, you'll see a tab for our Safe Together, Strong Together campus initiative. From here, you can link to our Return to Campus report, which will highlight everything we've done to date since day one of the pandemic, which seems like a while ago now. After reviewing this report, you can visit our testing site, the topic we are discussing today. And specifically, we've got two links, and we'll talk more about those around testing to try and provide you with good information regarding this. So when clicking on your COVID-19 test site, you will see instructions for testing centers, instructions about our new testing partnership, which is a new development in our Safe Together, Strong Together planning effort. So with that, Dr. Bronson, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here with you as always. We've had a lot of questions that have been pouring in on Facebook here, and I wonder if we might just jump right into it. The first question I see here is about how we selected the counties available for the different sites, and specifically around mail-in test kits and how we arrived at those counties that are available to that. Can you talk to us a little bit about the three sites maybe and how we got to that mailing test kit at home number?
Absolutely. You know, it's really about resources and also making sure that people have accessibility to being able to get these tests done. So we really looked at strategically those living here in Colorado, those located on the Front Range, and tried to identify sites, three both in northern, right around the Denver area, and then a southern location where people can have access to getting that test done. We also have folks that live here in western Colorado and really looking regionally at if it's, an ability for them to be able to get here to do their testing here at our location. And then that third piece that we really have looked at is how do we get those that are out of state and don't have access, live in a very rural part of our state, be able to do that test. And one solution was the at-home or mail-home kit test, which is a great resource, but it's also very limited. And so we want to make sure that we're using that judiciously as we send that out for students.
So I think one of the questions that I've heard from parents and students is, okay, so you've given me the map, and by the way, if you haven't clicked on that site, go ahead and do that. Click on the site that shows you the map. You can see by county, those counties in Colorado and of course out of state that are eligible for a mail-in test kit. What we also though recognize is there's going to be situations that we have not assumed. So requesting that, send us an email to safety@coloradomesa.edu and let us know if you're in a special, unique circumstance, and we're going to wait list folks to be able to approve. We've held back a very limited number of these mail home kits, and we're going to mail those on a very limited basis to those who wait list for a mail home kit who are inside of the counties that we've kind of identified for other test sites.
Absolutely. And I think that just moves us really nicely, and we've gotten a question about, is the deadline for Front Range and at-home testing the same as the Western Slope?
Yeah. So navigate with me, if you will. Go to that test site portion on the website. And if you scroll down below the map of Colorado, there's a couple of expansive boxes around the main campus Grand Junction site, the Front Range sites, and then the mail kit. Below that we have taken a stab at trying to put together an infographic that can show you, and if you look at like the right-hand side, I think it's a tan color maybe is my recollection, it shows you the date that you want to arrive on campus. And then what we've tried to do is back out, kind of reverse engineer that for you, so you can see, all right, if I want to arrive on that date, I know my resulting is going to take a few days. I know that I need to schedule it by X date. And so we're really trying to help you plan that work a little bit and back out from a timing standpoint. When should I schedule my test for? Dr. Bronson, talk to us a little bit about this kind of art meets science. We've talked about 3 to 5 days out from campus, and when's the optimum time for someone to get their test done before arriving back to campus, so that we're as safe as possible, but also recognizing some of the logistics involved?
Absolutely. And we've been getting a lot of questions about, well, how do I know how long it's going to be to get the results? And I think the graph that you're describing is a really great way to kind of back out your timeline for when you need to get that test done. And the reason why we care about that timeline so much is because we know this is one snapshot in time. This antigen test is going to tell us whether or not, when you did the test, if it was positive for COVID. And we also know to come back to campus safely, in order to have the best snapshot of what COVID's going to look like on campus, we also know that we want to limit our exposure en route as we're coming back. And so I think that really is that responsibility piece that we have of, we know that this is just one snapshot in time, but it's going to give us a really good idea if we're all doing that snapshot around a similar time, that we're going to know a little bit more about what COVID's going to look like on campus and what strategies right away we need to be implementing to make sure we keep one another safe.
Yeah, it occurs to me maybe this is a good time for us to pause and talk about test result timing. So we know around the country, and frankly with many labs, the test results have taken a long, long time. And it's probably important that we just are very direct with you. Much of the summer we've been working with a variety of labs trying to line this up. You can appreciate this would take a long time. Just recently, based on the test result time of 7, 8, 9, 10-day turnarounds, we made a last-minute change to go with a different vendor and a different lab who's been able to guarantee us a 48-hour turnaround. So that is dramatically faster than what the lab times have been throughout much of Colorado. So we're excited about that. That 48-hour timeline, though, begins at the moment that the lab receives it, meaning we have to ship it to them. So as a practical matter, okay, I've got to get swabbed. I've got to get that medium collected. Then that's got to get into a shipping medium and sent to a lab. So realistically, that's what, half a day to a day probably to get there, right? And then it's a 48-hour turnaround. So this is where you're seeing us refer to a 3-day at a minimum is probably the quickest we're going to see. But it's not 8 or 9 days. We think we've got that down to about 3 days. And that doesn't matter whether you're in Denver or in Grand Junction. Asterisk, if it's an at-home kit, now what?
Yeah. And we know with the at-home kit that not only is it going to take time to put in your order, then receive that kit, it can be 3 to 5 days before those at-home kits may arrive. And then thinking strategically about, I do the test at home, I do the nasal swab, I put it in the medium, I put it in my FedEx box, and I ship it back to Fulgent, which is our lab that we're utilizing. And then it's going to be 48 hours from when they receive that to when the test results are ready. So I think it really just comes back to utilizing that tool on the website, and just can't say enough. Go and check out that frequently asked questions page under testing. Hit that tab. It's going to answer a lot of those questions around timing of when you need to complete those tests.
So for those students who are out of state or in a very rural area that are getting a mail home kit, we would strongly recommend that you plan out enough time. I think what I just heard you describe is about an 8-day process to make sure that there is enough time for that kit to get mailed to you, for you to go ahead and swab yourself, get that kit turned around, respond back to the lab, and then they've got to process that result in time. So the mail home is going to take quite a bit longer than it's going to take for the Denver sites or for the main campus Grand Junction site. So just recognize that. That said, there's a very small number of students who are moving in early on August the 2nd. I want you to know we've got a small team between the athletics department, student services, residence life, and our testing team that are working to address those students. So several of you have already reached out to us and said, hey, I'm moving in on August the 2nd. I've got an athlete coming in. I'm out of state. Am I going to be able to get that test kit in time? So here's what I think we want to do at this stage. First one is, we know some of you have access to a test locally that's not in the CMU testing regime, that you may be able to work with your local doctor or a local lab, a local county, and get a test kit, a PCR antigen test, right? Not one of the antibody blood tests.
Correct.
And you can do that on your own. Do that. If you can't do that, but you can get to Grand Junction a few days early, do that. We can work with Residence Life. We've acquired some off-campus housing where you can test, isolate, and be ready to move in. Again, send us a note. We can work with you to provide that on campus, or off campus, I should say, while we wait for test results. The last piece that we're working overdrive right now, but we cannot guarantee, we're trying to figure out if we can get those overnighted yet this weekend for those that might be moving in as soon as next weekend. Belt and suspenders, I would strongly recommend the first two options, but we'll work with you directly on that particular issue. Dr. Bronson, will you jump in on the antigen versus antibody? I mentioned it, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of questions about this that have come up here on Facebook. What's the difference? Which one do they need?
Absolutely. So the antigen test is the test that we're recommending, and that's the one that's going to actually tell you whether or not you have the virus. There really just is not good validity and science right now behind the antibody test being able to inform decisions. So until there's a little more science behind it, we're really focusing on this antigen test and really wanting to know whether or not you are positive for COVID. So that is typically either done in an anterior nasal swab. Sometimes they'll do mucosal swabs, or if you've heard of the back of the brain test, that long swab that they'll use actually goes back into the posterior part of the nasopharynx. That is another option for all being able to do this antigen PCR test that we really want to have done before you come to campus. The good news is,
I was gonna say, we get a lot of
wait
questions
for
on
it.
this. Yes.
Yes, we're going with a nasal anterior test. That means no back of the brain tickling for this antigen test.
All right. So
to
for
come back
those
to
of us
campus.
that have a weak stomach, we know that we're going to be able to swab the front of our nose,
That's right.
and we're not going to cry. Okay, we're going to
I
make
mean,
it through this.
I can't guarantee the crying, but
Fair,
yes.
Fair. All right. All right. Another question has come up about what happens if, well, let me back up. We sent you an email earlier this week letting you know you would receive an email and a text message from Primary Bio, which is our partner who's helping us schedule out all these tests. What happens if I didn't get the text or the email, or maybe you thought it was spam and you deleted it or whatever? What do we do then?
Yeah. And I'm going to point you back to that frequently asked questions page on our testing home site. So that's actually now the very first question
Very
on
first
our
question.
frequently asked questions. And there's actually a link that you can go to. Hit that link, put in your 700 number, and we'll get you all taken care of.
Okay, so to be clear, if I didn't get a text, or if I deleted it, or if
Yep.
I didn't get an email, or if I accidentally deleted it,
Absolutely.
I simply go to our testing site, I click on the FAQs, and the very first one, there's a link. I can click on that, I can enter my 700 number, which by
Absolutely. You know, I think since we're talking about, you know, the testing, the linking of the 700 number, you know, some of the questions around the at-home testing have really been about how are we making sure that it's valid, that it's the person that should be taking the test is actually doing that test at home.
Okay, so this pandemic has required, in maybe new ways we haven't been accustomed to, that we are going to trust each other. We're going to have to trust each other to fill out daily our symptom trackers and be honest about that. If I'm not feeling well, if I have a cough, if I have a fever, I need to say so. I can't be in your room and check to make sure that you're telling the truth on that, and Dr. Bronson can't make sure and come around and take your temperature. We have a variety of tools, but it relies on us being direct about that. The same is going to be true on our testing. If you test in Colorado Springs and then go off and do a bunch of high-risk things and then come to campus, I won't know that, and I can't stop you from doing that. That's a really bad idea, and you're hurting the campus by doing that. The same is true with at home. We need everybody to show good faith, and we're in this together. So we need you to make good choices. And so we're going to come back to that a number of times. We got to make good choices together. So the testing is no different. The travel protocols are no different. We got to make good choices and be direct with each other.
Absolutely. You know, so much of our campus safety is contingent on us all doing our part.
So I got a follow up here on the mail home kits. What if I'm in a county or I'm in a space where it says you're going to send me a mail home, but I'd really rather just drive to a site and take care of it. Can I do that? The answer is yes. There's a way for you to just simply request. We're geofencing, which is a fancy way of saying we're tying your geography to what options you have in front of you on that primary bio registration. If you would rather go to a site and drive there, simply let us know that. There's a way to indicate that on the primary bio. Sign up, let them know which site you want to go to, and we are trying to make sure we have enough slots at every location to accommodate everybody, especially in those Denver sites. Grand Junction won't be a problem. We're going to have a lot of capacity here for throughput, so that shouldn't be a problem. So the answer is yes, you can drive to one of the Denver or Grand Junction sites and get tested here.
Absolutely. And you'd mentioned before that, as an option A or B, that you could get tested at home. Maybe we should talk just a little bit about if I want to get tested by my primary care provider.
Yeah.
What is sort of CMU's role in that? Will we cover that cost? We've been getting lots of questions around that.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, you know this better than I do, but a lot of counties, you can go as an asymptomatic person and go get tested, right? But that's not true everywhere.
That's right.
So some places you might have to have a referral from a doctor. Is that true? Mm-hmm. So it isn't necessarily universally true that you could simply go and get a test where you are. So we appreciate that. Depends on where you live, depends on how active it is. If you are able to do that, and that's the best option for you from a scheduling and convenience standpoint, that's great. We want to make sure, one, it's not an antibody test, right? It's an antigen PCR test. And the second piece is we want to make sure that that is going to be up to you how you work through that. Meaning, CMU has spent a lot of time and energy to build out this network to ensure that you have access through CMU to get a test. But if you choose to go through your own provider or your own county, public health, whomever, that's great as long as it's the right test and it's done in the right time frame. But we're not going to be able to help assist with the cost of that. We are, as you might imagine, pretty far extended on this as it is. We're not going to be able to help with that. So if you want that to be paid for by CMU, you need to work through the CMU network of testing options. I will say that the CARES Act, which many of us are maybe familiar with, it was the CMU family outside the CMU network.
Yep. And I think one thing to mention on that, there are lots of different tests that are being done out there. So we talked about the anterior nasal swab, the posterior nasopharyngeal swab, but it's probably worth mentioning also there is saliva tests that have come to market and have been FDA approved, and they are doing antigen tests with the saliva testing. So if that's an option for you, for where you live, that is also an option for the antigen tested.
Great. The nasopharyngeal, the back of the brain test. And there's also the saliva test. So any of those work?
Correct.
Blood test?
No blood test. No
blood
antibody
test.
test.
Got it.
Yes.
All right.
Just so we're clear.
Percent online. Do the students still need to get a test?
Yeah. And I think it's really good to clarify that even if you're taking classes online, if you're here and a part of our CMU campus and part of our family, you still do need to get testing. Mm-hmm. If you live off-site, you are not planning to come to campus at all for any activities, then that's a different scenario. And we are looking at a waiver process to do that. Maybe you want to talk just a little bit about what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I think the waiver is going to be fairly simple. We actually don't have it up on our website yet. Mm-hmm. So if you want to reach out to safety@coloradomesa.edu, send us an email, let us know. You can indicate that, and we can queue those up. We are developing that waiver. It'll be fairly straightforward, just indicating that we can see you're not going to be living on campus, you're not going to be visiting campus, and you're not going to be taking classes on campus. That would be an appropriate person who is exclusively at a distance. Mm-hmm. That would be an appropriate person for a waiver for the testing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We talked about the links. Talked about the maps. Oh, okay. I think we talked about the test results and the timing for that. 48 hours from the time that it arrives at the lab is our expectation for turnaround, which we're very excited about. We're going to hold our breath that they hold to that. We have an agreement in place to turn those in 2 days, but that's obviously a lot better than the 7, 8, 9 days we've been reading about.
Absolutely.
In the newspapers.
And I think while we're on the results question, we've been seeing some questions about if if I know my results, do I have to bring another copy of my results when I come to campus? And I think as we've talked about belt and suspenders, with this process, we're relying on a lot of really good technology and a lot of an ability to be able to access those results and see those results here on campus. But go ahead and bring your result with you. If you have a hard copy, it is worth just throwing it in and bringing it with you to campus.
Yep. So for the next few days, let's talk about that for a quick second. For those of you who decide, I'm just going to take care of this on my own, I'm going to go see my own doctor. For those of you that are doing that, we are going to publish on MavZone a way for you to answer a couple of questions. When did you get tested? What kind of test it is? Again, PCR antigen test. And then be able to upload either an image or a PDF or something of your test results, of a negative test result. We're going to do that for a few days and pilot it. And we'll do that through MavZone. So stay tuned. We're going to give you an opportunity to do that for those of you that decide you're going to bring your own test results with you. To your point, Dr. Bronson, belt and suspenders in these times, bring that hard copy with you when you're ready to move in as well, just in case there are any questions.
Yep.
We've gotten questions because I think as people are calling labs or calling clinics and other things, some of you are hearing there's no way we can turn these in 48 hours, and so there's going to be some confusion around that. Appreciate that. Part of that confusion, I think, is being caused by the fact that many of these big national labs are, in fact, 7 and 8, 9 day turnarounds right now.
Yep.
And that is the majority of what test kits are out there. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for a medical worker or a public health worker to respond to you and say, there's no way they could turn it in under a week. We are working with a lab that has agreed to a 48-hour turnaround. So we're going to continue to hold our breath, hold them to that agreement, and we believe that, yes, we can deliver on that 48-hour turnaround from the time the lab receives it.
And I think it's important to clarify in that 48 hours, that's not 48 hours from when you've done the test that you'll see those results. It's 48 hours from when those lab kits are received at the lab. They will get us those results back within 48 hours. So I think it's good to clarify that timing just so you're not waiting sort of on pins and needles. And if you haven't heard anything in 48 hours, what do I do? But I think it brings up a good question. What do folks do if they, we've gotten lots of questions about what do I do if I haven't heard back about my lab results?
Yeah, so we're going to be staffing up an inquiry center, basically a phone center that can take those questions. Right now, if I'm being honest with you, we are working really hard to take this additional volume of emails and phone calls, and do keep sending us those emails at safety@Colorado Mesa. Even if it takes us a couple of days, we will get back to you and respond. And I know there's a variety of questions that are showing up in the chat here about very specific questions to your child or your unique scenario. Send us that email because I think we're going to want to, at a minimum, look carefully at your individual situation. But we're also, we may be able to even get on the phone and just make sure we're really clear and have a quick phone call with you. Megan O'Neill is in the COVID command center and has been doing a fantastic job. And one of us is going to get back to you, and we're going to chat with you and make sure we answer those really specific questions. One of the questions that's come up, Dr. Bronson, is scheduling. And I know, volume is tough. This is day by day. We know things today we didn't know yesterday. The same will be true tomorrow. As we try and figure out how to manage all the time slots and all the scheduling availability, we're going to be bringing new appointments on every day, right?
Yep.
So part of this is going to be a scalability. We're going to keep communicating with you every couple of days, so you need to stay in tune to those emails, stay in touch on social media as we open up those slots. We don't anticipate with it we're going to be overwhelmed in any of these. I know the first day has been, so just know that. I know a few of you have been trying to sign up, and within the first day we kind of overwhelmed them. We're working as we speak to open more slots up. That said, if we get to a point where we literally have maxed out all of our options, Grand Junction will always be kind of the final fail-safe, right? We've built out a site here that's going to be able to be multiple lanes, drive-through, almost akin to the Pepsi Center, right?
Absolutely.
And so we'll be able to accommodate at a minimum as a fail-safe here in Grand Junction. Don't panic. Give us a day or two to try and get some more of those slots opened up, especially at the Denver sites, because as those open up, we'll continue to contact and be in touch with you, making those available.
Absolutely. And I think it brings up a good point. We talk about scalability, and maybe this is a good point just to let them know about some of our community partners
Yeah.
that are making some of these testing sites in the Front Range a possibility and scaling up a huge testing site here. We're going to test as many people in just a few weeks as we have across
Yeah.
all of Mesa County.
For
Do you want
sure.
to talk just a little bit about who those partners have been?
Yeah, so if for those of us that have been kind of living and breathing this for so long, not all of us have, right? So rewind a few months. Governor Polis, when he launched the return to work, he said, okay, we're in the middle of the stay at home, but we've got to figure out how to keep our economy going. Many of you remember this. The governor held a big press conference. He brought in former Denver Mayor Federico Pena and a couple of other former elected officials, to include a guy by the name of Mike Johnston of the Gary Community Investments. And they have launched this nonprofit business betterment venture called COVID Check Colorado. And we're one of their first and earliest partners, and we have been working with them now for about 6 weeks, maybe longer, 8 weeks, time flies, to arrange all of this. So we're working with really two partners, in addition to the Gary Community Investments, with former State Senator Mike Johnston, and that is a group called Primary Bio. They're a startup that's helping the scheduling piece of this, so that's who you've already started to interact with on the scheduling side and the resulting side. Once you get to campus, you're going to then be utilizing on your mobile phone, you'll be utilizing an app called Scout. And what Scout is going to do is talk about the contact tracing and the daily symptom tracking. And that's a really critical part of this whole strategy that you've been so integral to, and you can talk about it in just 1 second. So that Scout app is going to pair nicely, and it's going to be a requirement for all of your students, all of you students, to have on your phone, and it'll allow you to enter in those symptoms every day. It'll allow you, as you are symptom free, right, to be able to show to everybody, I got a green check mark on my phone, so that the rest of the campus knows you're good to go. And it'll also allow us to very quickly and responsively talk to you if you've been in close contact with somebody who does turn out to be positive. So maybe you can talk to us about that contact tracing idea and how we're going to utilize that.
And I know this is a testing-centric conversation, but
It
you
is.
know it engages my geeky side to get to talk a little bit about contact tracing and symptom tracking, because testing is one component of keeping our campus safe, but really that contact tracing and being able to do the symptom tracking is so important. So not only knowing if you have symptoms, but being able to react really quickly and get you the support you need if you are having any COVID-like symptoms is going to be really important. And not coming to campus is a big piece of that. So if we know we're not feeling well, being willing to say, I'm going to stay home. And CMU has built the support structures in our academics and student services to be able to make that a possibility. So faculty know and professors know that there are times when students are going to be sick, and we're going to be flexible with that and try and ensure that we can continue to engage you in your learning while you are staying home and are sick. The other piece of that is the contact tracing piece, and this is actually something in the epidemiology world that's been around for a very long time, but it's something that we can utilize here on campus to essentially track down a virus. So it's kind of like being virus detectives. And we're going to have a whole field of folks here on CMU that have been trained to be able to do this process. And it's essentially a way of identifying folks that may have been in contact with someone else who may be positive with COVID, and being able to very quickly put in mitigation strategies to be able to stop the spread of the virus here on campus.
So one of the questions that we have here is, one, do I really need to have a negative test result in order to come to campus?
That's an easy answer. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So let's say you get a positive result. Then what?
Yeah, so we know that young people are disproportionately asymptomatic positives. And so, you know, it might be easier if you're feeling symptomatic, you're feeling sick, you see that coming. If you're asymptomatic and you feel fine, and we know this is more true, right, for young adults than it is for the rest of us, it's entirely possible you may be totally shocked to learn that you're a positive. Now what? And the short answer is going to be really simple. It's going to be isolation. And maybe you can talk about what are the rules for that and how we would go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say a positive test result comes back. What do you do? I think one of the first important things is you start looking at dates.
Okay.
So you look at the date that you were tested, and then we're going to recommend isolation and quarantine for 14 days.
From the time?
From the time that you took the test.
Of the test,
So let's say you get your test results back. It's already been
3 days
potentially
or something.
3 to 4 days. So then the clock starts there with 10 more days that we would encourage you to be isolated or quarantined. We understand that that's going to potentially impact your start to school.
Yeah.
So then what?
So I think one of the things we want to be able to do is give some reassurance here. Our faculty have been working for about 4 months now, really trying to be thoughtful about what does class look like in the fall. And we know some of the trade-offs. We've talked through a lot of them. Testing is one of them. There's a lot of these trade-offs that we know we're all going to have to engage in, and faculty are no different. They recognize students are going to miss some class. And if you're positive, even if you're feeling fine, you're going to have to isolate. Do not panic. We're going to be able to isolate. The faculty know that. They're going to get a notice that you are isolating. We're not going to share specific health information with them, but we're going to let them know, hey, Amy's not coming to class this week, and she's going to be isolating. So they'll know that, and they're going to work with you on that. So it is possible that you have a positive. You have to isolate for a little bit. That could be true here at the front end during the tranche testing. It could be part of our surveillance testing.
Absolutely.
Ongoing through the course of the semester. Either way, if you show up with a positive, even if you feel fine, you're going to isolate. We have a protocol for that. We have rooms available off campus for that. We have at-home nurse care to make sure we stop by, get you some Gatorade, get you some chicken soup, put eyes on you, make sure that you're not playing too many video games, and we'll make sure that your faculty know that. So don't panic about that. It's possible that this pushes you back, you miss a little bit of class. We're going to work with you, so don't stress it.
Absolutely. We just threw a word out there, and I realized that we're in this every day, and we probably need to step back again and talk a little bit about surveillance testing.
Yeah.
We're doing this baseline testing. I think we
That's
talked
right.
a little bit about that, but maybe we should give a little overview on what surveillance testing is going to look like.
So baseline, we're all going to get tested.
That's right.
You, me,
Oh, yeah.
all of us, all of our faculty. The president is actually first up on Monday morning, I think, is going to get tested the 27th, right? Our testing starts this Monday. All of us are getting tested. Students, faculty, staff, all of us. So that's our baseline. First day of class happens. Now what? We've got about 14 weeks. First day of class on August 17th through Thanksgiving. We are going to be doing daily surveillance testing, meaning we're going to be going all over campus. We're going to be doing random sampling and ensuring that we are very regularly, very frequently testing all over campus to ensure that we're monitoring to see if we have something, if we have a positive, if we have a couple of positives, that we're able to identify it, we're able to isolate it, and we're able to prevent spread.
That's right.
And what did I miss on that?
Well, I think it's important to highlight that in addition to the surveillance testing, we're still going to be utilizing contact tracing to be able to identify folks that may have been in contact with someone else who are at a high risk of exposure, meaning they've been within 6 feet for greater than 10 to 15 minutes around someone that has a positive COVID test. And we're going to do testing, diagnostic testing for that. In addition to anybody that's symptomatic, we're going to send them to our Student Wellness Center and be able to follow up and being very thoughtful about that. So not only are we doing that random sampling across campus, but we're also doing diagnostic testing in addition to that, which is really going to allow us to have a really good idea of what's happening on campus.
Okay, so let's leverage that idea and come back. We got a question here about what happens if I can't be exactly in this 3 to 7 day window before I come back. Now I've got my answer. I want to hear what your answer is.
So the 3 to 7 days is best case scenario, right? When we're looking at trying to get that one snapshot in time, 3 to 7 days is great. But we also know that there are certain life circumstances that are just not going to allow for that. And I think one of the pieces of this plan is about sustainability. And I think when we look at that, we know you have unique circumstances that aren't going to allow for that 3 to 7 days. But as close as we can come to that, the better.
Yeah, and maybe just a good reminder for all of us, from the time that we test to the time we move into our residence hall to the time we're back in class, what is really our obligation?
Yeah. And our obligation is to adhere to those social distancing. We're wearing our masks. We're trying to limit or decrease the amount that we're interacting with people outside of those that we interact with on a very regular basis every day. And as we come back to campus, the more that we're utilizing those universal precautions, we're washing our hands, we're doing the social distancing, those things are all going to be what's going to keep us the most safe as we come back together.
I see one question here about Dad is a doctor, and can I do a saliva test in his office? I would tell you yes, based on what Dr. Bronson's telling us. A saliva test is a perfectly acceptable test. And bring your dad with us because we may need him here.
That's right.
On campus once
take
we
him.
start. So we'll give you a meal plan and everything, Doc. Could use the help.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, we have had this question. We have a number of our students who are either CNAs or they're already working in an industry where they're getting tested regularly. Is that going to suffice?
Are going to be something you can utilize. And maybe it's a good time to talk just a little bit about if you get tested somewhere else, how do we get those results to CMU?
Yep. So again, we're going to pilot this idea through MapZone. Hopefully you're all familiar with that at this stage. So within your intranet MapZone, we're going to set up a kind of a e-form that's going to allow you to, we've already got your information, right? Because you've authenticated into MapZone. At that point, you can tell us when did you test, what type of test did you take, verifying we're at this PCR antigen type of test, and then the ability to upload a document. So if you get a hard copy of your result that says, I'm good to go, it's going to verify the date, it's going to verify what kind of test it was, and you'll be able to do that, or maybe even just snap an image of that paper with your phone and upload it that way. So we're going to work on that while we try and determine if we can upload something else into our primary bio that's maybe a little bit less.
Absolutely.
Schedule your site and pick a time slot. They're also going to be coordinating the resulting process. For the vast majority, right, I think, the vast majority, 95, 98% of us, those are going to be negative test results. And we're going to get a notification via text and email, right?
Yep.
So you'll get that same email, the primarybio.com email, and then text message. So don't block them and don't put them in your junk or delete them. That's where you'll get your test results. If you have a positive, we're going to work with our contact tracing team to make sure that you don't just get an email or a text, that you also have a phone conversation so we can immediately start talking about what are the next protocols, what are the appropriate steps in the unlikely scenario that you are positive.
Yep. And I think we've talked a lot about there are individual issues that are going to come up that, especially we're asking you to, choose your testing date now. And maybe it's good to talk just a little bit about, are people allowed to change their testing date, and how do they do that if they've already signed up for something and then life happens?
Yeah, so yes is the short answer, and related to this is, can I just walk in? Please don't do that. This is a high volume, major lift. I mean, moving Patton's Army feels to me like it must have been simpler than what we're trying to do here. But please don't walk up. Please don't walk in. Let's schedule these out. If you have picked a time or scheduled a time that now does not work, or you just mistakenly picked the wrong day or whatever else, send us an email to the safety@coloradomesa.edu. We'll work with you in Primary Bio to peel off that and allow you to reschedule a new test time.
And I think, just to point out, we really want this to be as smooth as possible for everyone. So as we think about trying to test a lot of people in a short amount of time,
thousands and thousands of people,
I think it's really important to make sure that you're staying tuned in to things that Primary Bio are sending you. So there's going to be more information that's coming out, but there's going to be paperwork to fill out, and we're just asking that we all stack hands on saying we're going to take care of a lot of that, and not just a lot of it, all of it, before we come to our testing date and time, because that's really going to make this whole process run really smoothly here on campus.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the app and how that might work in terms of being able to do contact tracing and symptom tracking. And I think one of the things that we maybe haven't done a great job of doing is really clarifying, when we talk about tracking, we're talking about symptoms, not tracking you, right? So one of the things you need to know is that this app is really a tool to help you as a student and to help us as a university make sure that you can quickly and easily identify, in, again, the unlikely scenario that you wind up with a positive test result. How can you tell the folks who you've been in close contact with in really short order that you have a positive and that they probably need to isolate and have a consultation with somebody in public health and or the medical community? And so this tool really allows us, it actually allows you on your phone, because we don't know who you've been in contact with, right? I mean, we know who your roommates are, we maybe know who your teammates are, but beyond that, we don't know who you've been in contact with necessarily. So this phone app isn't going to tell us everyone who, it doesn't have a camera on, it's not watching you, it's not, it's not tracing you where you're going. What it's really doing is allowing you to alert those folks and work with us to alert students to make sure that we limit spread as much as possible. And the other thing it lets us do is track symptoms, right? And why is that so important?
Well, and I think it's so important to differentiate between the symptom tracking. We're not personal tracking, we're symptom tracking. And why is symptom tracking important? Because that often is one of the first signs that we have COVID. And so, yes, we know that lots of folks in this age population that we have here on campus aren't going to have symptoms, but it's one more way that we can help detect this early. So really looking at that symptom tracking is really important. And then the contact tracing, I think that sounds really scary and overwhelming. And I think the good news about that is we're going to come back on here at a later date and have another conversation. Just like testing feels like there's a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
I think symptom tracking and contact tracing is another piece of that.
Yeah, we'll loop back around. I know we have scheduled for next week another teletown hall. I think many of you have participated in that format, which you've told us in various ways and shapes that you like. So we're going to keep doing those. We've got another one scheduled, I think, maybe next Friday.
Yep.
So that will be another opportunity for us to chat more on the symptom tracking.
Yep.
We've got a few questions here about move-in and bringing guests. So mom and dad are coming over to Grand Junction for move-in. You've got your negative test, and now we've scheduled through ResLife your 2-hour window for move-in. Do the people that are coming with you need to test? And the answer is no, they don't. What we are going to ask you to do that day is go through an attestation, right? And effectively a paper version of a symptom track, right? And so that'll allow folks as they're moving in to have mom and dad go ahead down that list and make sure that we're all attesting that we've got no symptoms, we haven't been exposed to anybody, right? We don't have any known exposures or, anything like that, right?
Yep. And I think it's important to note that even beyond doing the symptom attestation, we really want you to come to campus if you're feeling well. We also want you to bring your mask and to do your social distancing, washing of your hands while you're here. So if you're going to come on campus and be a part of campus community, that social distancing piece is really the way that we keep from having a high exposure level to a very low or minimal exposure level for folks that are going to be on campus for a real short time. So I think that's a really important piece of that.
Probably a great time to just remind ourselves, the mask is an important piece, social distancing, an important piece. As you think about these, not one of these things, testing, symptoms, contact, not one of these things is going to help us beat this. But together, right, we start to layer these. It's kind of this accretion of mitigation strategies. Together, all of these things will help us limit spread. So it's this combination, right?
Yep.
Good hand washing, all the rest.
Yep. And I think it's a good point to bring up. We've talked about surveillance testing, but we didn't touch on some exciting news around some surveillance testing that's not related necessarily to doing a swab test, but looking at campus and another data point. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about?
Yeah. Science is a marvelous thing. We've got some brilliant microbiologists and engineers and others who've been really working carefully with colleagues all over the state about how can we continue to monitor and surveil to ensure that we do not have spread happening on campus. So one of the ways that we've looked at is this idea of pool testing. This is not, as it turns out, several weeks in, tougher than it sounds. Working to continue to chase that because it's a much faster turnaround, and we believe we can do broader volumes. So we're going to continue to pursue that to complement what we've talked about in terms of random testing. We've also looked at this idea of wastewater testing. Now, this kind of grossed me out at first, but the more you listen to the science, and we've talked to other universities who are looking into this, the more you realize that this has some potential promise. And this idea of wastewater testing coming out of sewer effluent from different areas on campus, in particular residence halls, where we could potentially add another layer of monitoring to say, hey, we may have a problem here. And so we're aggressively looking into that. We've got some very smart scientists that are describing methodologies that I can't even pronounce, looking into this. So hopefully we'll have more information on that in the coming days and weeks.
Yep. And I think to be clear, to put everyone at ease, this does not mean we're coming into your residence hall to test. This is
That's gross.
happening on campus, but that testing is really important because it does show viral shedding and can let us know and send up a smoke alarm that there's potentially something happening.
That's right.
Yep.
The more early alert we can do, the better. That's really what this whole strategy is based around. Find it, isolate it, and prevent it from spreading.
That's right.
All right, what other questions do we have? I think more questions around retesting. I think we've answered those.
I think maybe just a little clarification around when are they going to be able to do, when am I going to be able to order this at-home test kit?
Oh, yeah. So the ordering of the test kit is hours away, I think, is the short answer. So as you all got this email earlier this week, we have been sending these out literally as we ink deals, as we're able to secure the test kits, as we're able to literally sign these agreements. Emails are coming hot on the heels. Just ask our partners. So we are pushing hard, and this is changing hour to hour. So the test kits have been ordered, they've been secured, and we're just working out a few technological issues on the back end that should make those available within hours, not days, where the mail home test kits will be able to be ordered up and shipped.
Yep. We're also getting some questions about thermometers. Do I need to bring one? And I thought, maybe we should talk just a little bit about not only what we're going to support students with,
Sure.
But also what's going to be happening across campus.
Yeah, the short answer is if you have a thermometer, bring it. It's good hygiene, and it's a good tool to have at your fingertips. That said, we've ordered a series of individual thermal scanners. What is a thermal scanner? Well, from me to the camera I'm looking in right now, it's a similar device, and it has a kind of an iPad looking thing where you are going to walk in as you go into your residence hall, right? So you swipe in, you come in, and then there's a thermal scanner, and you're going to walk up to that. It's going to take your temperature real quick, and you keep moving. You're green. If in the off chance you've got a temp, it's going to show that. You can retest. So if you just ran over from hot yoga, you can pause, breathe for 2 minutes, retest. But if 2 of those happen in a row and it's checking your core temperature and it's telling you, hey, you've got a temperature, it's going to alert your app and say, hey, as part of your symptom tracking, you're showing hot here, and you really need to go chat with the Student Wellness Center. So those thermal imaging scanners are going to be at the residence halls and at the dining hall, pretty much anywhere you have a place to authenticate in, a library, the rec center, the dining hall, I think I said. And those are just really additional tools for you as students to be able to just be checking, doing some of those good hygiene things. We've got sanitization stations all over, right? We got lots of soap and water. We got lots of cleaning happening. And just like that, we're also going to have those thermal scanners so you can be taking your temperature on a regular basis.
Yep. And I think that's that sustainability piece. We know that, it feels like sometimes a big ask.
Yep.
That there's things that we're going to ask you to change and do, and we're going to try and make this as convenient as possible to make sure that we're continuing to get that data and those metrics across campus that's going to keep us safe.
And it's going to feel a little different, right? The testing, clearly this is not something that we're all accustomed to. This is going to be a little bit different. But the reality is, in the same way after 9/11, we all got used to TSA and going through airport security. We're going to figure this out. We'll get used to it. We'll go through it together, and we'll do that with a smile on our face.
That's right. Yeah. And Tony, we appreciate your kind words. I think, we appreciate getting to be on here and talk about all of this. And so just want to continue to get your feedback, and that's what makes this plan stronger.
So if you're watching this, if you're part of this, put a comment in. Let us know if this format has been useful. If you prefer the Teletown Hall format, if you like this format, we'll do it again. If you tell us, glare is bad and you don't like the way my voice sounds or whatever the case might be, tell us that too, and we won't use this format. We'll shift and we'll try something else. But give us some feedback. Let us know how this is going for you. We'll continue to communicate as best we can. Email, Teletown Hall, social media, etc. Continue to hang with us. There's a lot of ground yet to plow, and so we really appreciate you being patient and really sticking with us. So.
And again, I think in these broad formats, we don't get to hear your individual questions or concerns. So please, if there's something for your circumstance that's very different, please reach out to us. That is why we are here, and we want to help and make this transition back to campus as successful as possible for everyone.
We're excited. I had a question earlier this week from a newspaper reporter and asking, what do you think about this return to campus? Look, we don't work in higher ed because we like a bunch of empty buildings. We love students. We can't wait to see you guys. We're really excited to have you back on campus. So with that, we're going to wrap up. You've been patient with us. Thanks for giving us some of your time. Again, fill in the chat. Let us know if this was helpful or not. Send us an email to safety@coloradomesa.edu. Let us know what else is on your mind, how we can help you navigate some pretty unknown times. So with that, we're going to sign off. Good afternoon. Good night. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
See you on campus soon.
See you soon.
Mhm.